Do you want to keep up to date with all the marine conservation news, but you just don't have time to scroll through the hundreds of news articles that is on your Facebook feed and actually read any of these articles? Well, this video is perfect for you, as in This Week in Conservation, I'm going to summarize the biggest and most interesting topics that have come up in the last week in the news. Welcome to Ginger and Sea Guys, I'm Greg Holder, and this is This Week in Marine Conservation. So let's dive straight in. So the first topic I want to talk about is probably the saddest topic to come from marine conservation this week, and that was the mass stranding that happened in Tasmania at the end of last week and into the first few days of this week, where nearly 500 long-finned pilot whales were stranded across two main beach areas. And unfortunately, the vast majority of these whales did die, but the amazing work of the volunteers and professionals that went down to help these whales did manage to refloat and release over 100 of the long-fin pilot whales, which is an amazing effort, and it is thought and hoped that these whales will not re-beach and they will be able to actually gather back together as a pod and continue their lives healthily in the ocean in the wild. I just want to give a special mention to all the amazing volunteers and staff that went down and helped in Tasmania to try and rescue as many whales as possible. They were working for 5 days straight in very tough conditions, very rough and very cold water. And as a trained marine mammal medic myself, even though I've not gone to any live strandings, just attending the training, I know how exhausting it can be. There's pretty much no rests unless you've got a big enough team to sort of swap in. Standing in the ocean alone is tiring. Trying to help these huge whales that could weigh a few tons back into the deeper waters, it is absolutely exhausting and very, very emotional work when you're working with so many huge but intelligent animals. So I just want to say, thank you and well done to all of the people that were involved in that rescue, and to get over 100 whales back into deeper water is just an amazing achievement, and we really hope that those whales that were released can sort of regather in their pod and continue their life as normal. It's worth mentioning that these mass strandings are, in fact, unfortunately natural events. As much as there are many mass strandings that definitely can be put down to human interaction, whether that's through sonar or radar testing, whether that's through sonic blast testing or just boat traffic, there has definitely been a fair amount of cetacean strandings due to human activity, but it is thought that this stranding itself is actually, or was, a completely natural phenomena. There's no reason, and there was no activity in the local area that gave reason to think this might be human caused. And it is known that the cetaceans do mass strand because of their very strong social bond. If just one or two of the whales go off course and maybe go into a high risk zone with sandbanks and a strong tide, the others will follow. And this is pretty much what happened here. It's thought that maybe one or two went off course, and unfortunately the rest of the pod followed, which caused this devastating amount of whales being beached. So even though so many pilot whales did perish, we've got to think about those 100 or so that did get refloated and released back into the wild, and hope that those guys can make a full recovery and continue to rebuild their pod as it was. Okay, so the next topic I want to talk about is something that has got a lot of publicity currently, but has interestingly had quite a few mixed opinions from different shark organizations or shark advocates as individuals, researchers or scientists. So this is the topic of Shark Squalene being used in a COVID vaccine, and the fact that 500,000 sharks may be killed in order to provide the squalene for this vaccine. Now, first of all, I want to be clear that I am obviously against any sort of killing of sharks and against the use of any of their products in any industry. However, I do want to look at this topic objectively and really look at the true facts of this article. So in the article they state that to provide one vaccine dose to everyone in the world, it would require about 250,000 sharks, and they are predicting that the whole world may need 2 vaccines, therefore it will be about 500,000 sharks. However, Diego Cardonosa, who is a very well-known shark geneticist and has done lots of interesting research on different shark species in pet food and his cosmetics, gives the opinion that actually, because there are over 100 million sharks killed every year, the vast majority of them for the shark fin industry and the shark meat industry, then in fact those 500,000 shark livers that are needed for the COVID vaccine won't actually require any additional sharks to be killed, as there are plenty of sharks being killed around the world where the liver is not being used. Now, Shark Squalene is used in other products, which is another reason that I have mixed feelings about this article, is because many other bigger problems are being ignored here, such as the fact that Shark Squalene is being used in makeup and cosmetics, and yet this doesn't seem to be as big an issue as the Shark Squalene being used in a COVID vaccine. Now, obviously I'm completely against Shark Squalene being used in the COVID vaccine, which is why I completely back this petition, and I have signed the petition to say that we should not be using Shark Squalene in this vaccine, particularly because there is an easy plant-based alternative that can be used. But my mixed feelings come from the fact that a lot of other bigger problems are sort of being ignored, even with this huge amount of publicity for the COVID vaccine. The use of sharks for cosmetics, for pet food, for meat in fish and chip shops, and for the shark fin industry sort of has been sort of left in the background here. So my hope is that the extra publicity that this COVID vaccine topic has got will encourage more people to start thinking about what other things they may use or buy that may have shark products in, and hopefully the general awareness that shark is in a lot more things than we are aware of, and the fact that sharks are in such a dire way in terms of numbers, that more people will become more aware. But I am nervous that once people sign the petition for the COVID vaccine, they will think that they've done their bit to protect sharks, and in fact that's sort of that problem sorted, where there are many bigger problems that we need to address in the shark conservation world, such as the biggest problems, which is overfishing and the shark fin industry. And the way you can help that is reducing the seafood that you eat, and if you do continue to eat seafood, making sure it's from a sustainable source and checking how it's caught. If you are eating tuna that is caught on a long line, you are likely contributing to many shark deaths, much more than the COVID vaccine does. So we really need to look into the bigger problems and address the bigger problems that are also easily solved, like not overfishing the oceans, not using long lining, not trawling, and really start to address these problems instead of just focusing on a relatively small problem, as much as it should be stamped out as well, but a relatively small problem in the bigger scheme of shark number decline. So the next two articles are much more good news articles, which is really nice to talk about. The first one is the fact that earlier this week, England officially banned the use of all plastic straws, plastic stirrers, and plastic-based cotton buds, which is absolutely brilliant news, as this will without doubt reduce the amount of plastic waste that we as a community are creating. However, in my opinion, this is still not big enough steps. We are now at a stage that small little changes, such as this banning of these 3 small products, is not big enough moves. Now again, this is a step in the right direction. The banning of these products is going to reduce the amount of plastic that reaches the ocean in the millions. However, there are still many other sources of plastic that are not being addressed by the government or by the consumers on an individual scale that we must address, such as plastic packaging for food and for deliveries, and all these other problems where we are still producing millions and millions of tons of plastic every year that is just going to landfill sites or going straight into the ocean. So this is a great step, and we should celebrate the steps forward that our government is making by banning these products, but we should also not take our foot off the pedal and continue to pressure them, to encourage them to make bigger changes, because we need to see bigger changes. We are not in a place where very small changes every few years is going to be enough. We need to make big global and fundamental changes to the way we live, the way we buy, the way we shop, and this can be done in a huge part by the government by supporting recycling schemes, reuse schemes, and calling up on the large corporations that are still producing so much plastic, the Coca-Colas, the Doritos, the Unilevers, that are still supplying so much plastic without any consequences. We must start calling out these companies to reduce their plastic waste. Now, the last topic I want to talk about is again a really good news topic, and that is the fact that a few days ago the Chinese president announced that China will be completely carbon emission free by 2060. Now, this was relatively completely out of the blue. Apparently no one was expecting this announcement to be made, and it could cause a bit of a chain reaction that causes other countries to start upping their game and really calling out for bigger changes. Now this follows on from one of the biggest climate agreements that has ever happened, which was the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. Now, there was supposed to be a meeting to review those goals and to set new goals this year. Due to COVID-19, it has been postponed to next year. However, this did not stop the Chinese president announcing this really big, bold move. Now, considering that China is the world's largest polluter of carbon emissions, as well as the world's largest coal user and the world's second largest oil user after the US, this is a really, really positive step in the right direction. And as I mentioned, what is hoped is that by the Chinese president announcing this, other countries will start to up their game in order to keep up with what China hopefully will be doing to reduce their carbon emissions. And one of the biggest possible positives of this is China will need to make huge investments in renewable energies to make this happen by 2060. And what happens in any economy when more money is invested in it, it gets cheaper. The more you do something, the cheaper it gets. Therefore, the more you do it, and therefore it gets cheaper and cheaper. So this means that there is a really good chance, if China start investing a lot more in the renewable energies, which they will need to do to maintain this goal of zero carbon emissions or net carbon emissions by 2060, is that renewable energies like solar and wind are going to get much cheaper and much more available for the whole world, which is something that is really needed to help all the populations around the world really embrace renewable energies and be able to throw fossil fuels out the back window and not rely on them anymore. So those are the 4 big topics in this week in marine conservation. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you think that I've missed out any really big topics, please do drop a comment below telling me what I may have missed, and I want to make sure I keep up with it. If you enjoyed this video and got some value out of them, do give it a like on the button below, and don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with all news in marine conservation, continue learning about sharks, marine conservation and diving. Thank you so much for joining today, guys, and I'll see you at the next one.